I'm wondering, how does T.D. Jake's daughter find herself in a strip club for money? And he's out encouraging all of these women to be loose. And I'm doing everything I can to be bound again. Because we only think that people have it all together. We don't know what they go through when they go home. I met a boy, and anyone who's met that one boy, and I dropped out of school. And I walk up to the car, and there's a woman in the car, which I knew there was going to be a woman in the car. And I said, "What are you doing with my husband?" I am not a minister, I am a ministry. That means I've taken all of the things in my life that I thought would at one point hurt me or harm me, keep me from grace, and used it to help other people. When I first started speaking and people kind of started identifying with my message, my biggest concern was I didn't realize why people were connecting with me. I was trying to create a facade, a mask, a persona for people who had their own mask. Because we only think that people have it all together. We don't know what they go through when they go home. My siblings used to have shouting competitions, and it wasn't me. I didn't know how to do it. And so it really made me feel like I didn't belong in church. I don't sing. The Bible was boring. I keep it real. I'm just going to be honest with you. At that age, the Bible wasn't that interesting to me. And then when I had my son at 14, for me, it really felt well, this is just even more confirmation that you don't really fit, that you don't really belong in this mega family, mega preacher church thing. For me, really, church taught me how to pretend. Because I didn't really fit. And I didn't really understand why so many people had so much joy and then could go into life. How do you deal with life and have this joy? It didn't really make sense to me because I had all of these questions and all of these confusions in my head, and I didn't want to shout about it. I wanted to talk about it. How did you get there? Because I think we do a very incredible job of talking about where we are now, but nobody tells us how we got there. I think I had my son at an early age so I could learn the act of courage very early for such a time as this, because I think that a lot of people get to borrow my voice while they're still waiting to give a voice to their own. I think that the person who told me that I didn't have to keep the baby had this misconception that if I gave the baby away via adoption or had an abortion that I would just get off the hook. And the reality is that you don't just get off the hook, regardless of what your situation is, that it's not an easy one to make, and that you still carry a scar from that, whether you have the baby or not, that we all end up wounded. And so I just felt for me, the wound that I wanted to tend to involved me keeping my child, and recognize and respect that that's not the decision that a lot of other people have made, and but that no one just gets away with it. I knew that I wanted to be with God, and I wanted to in some way kind of fit in ministry, and so I told my dad, well, what I'll do is I'll go to college. I'm going to study accounting because I want to be the CPA at the Potter's house. I met a boy, and anyone who's met that one boy, and I dropped out of school. And my parents have a very strict go to school or go to work policy. There's no way around it, okay? I don't know what they think we do at home. My father's I get up and go to work, you get up and go to work. You going to work or you going to school? Those are your only options. So when I dropped out of school, I was, grown, and I'm not going to move back home. And I moved in with my boyfriend. Yes, I was shacking. I was listen, I can't play with Tom. That's what we call him when we in it. I'd be I can't play with Tom. I'm going to have to get a job. I'm going to have to learn how to pay some rent and pay some bills, and I need some money fast. And she told me, well, I know where you can make some money really fast, but you're not going to be able to use your last name when you apply for the job. I was working at a strip club. I'm wondering, how does T.D. Jake's daughter find herself in a strip club for money? And he's out encouraging all of these women to be loose. And I'm doing everything I can to be bound again. And I get a call, and they say, we know you're working at a strip club, and you need to come home. And I was there in 25 minutes. I go home, and the first thing she did was hug me. Like, she didn't ask me any questions. Literally, I can remember walking into her bedroom and her just hugging me. Working at the strip club was both scary and comforting. Scary because they tell you be careful walking to your car. The guys get drunk and they could be touching on you. Someone could go too far. You smile too long, someone gets the wrong idea. So it was scary on that level. But honestly, it was a little bit comforting, because after spending so much of my life as T.D. Jake's daughter and trying to do well in school and trying to recover from this pregnancy and prove to people that they were wrong about me, I was finally somewhere where no one cared. No one cared whose daughter I was. No one cared that I had my baby at 14. I was just there to get my tips. And I found a lot of comfort in the idea that no one was expecting anything from me. And that comfort the comfort did hurt me. And the reason we found ourselves in the strip clubs and on drugs and everywhere else is because they showed us more love than y'all did. Showed us more love. And that's the thing, because I don't think we as the body of Christ always realize that in our effort to make sure that people know that they're doing wrong and that God is going to get them and that they will be judged, I don't know that we always show them God's love. And so our task then becomes to show people a God they can't touch and people they can't relate to. And so I find myself married, living in the DC area with everything that looked great on the outside. Successful husband, beautiful children, but I was hurting on the inside. And my journey to even acquiring this dream led me to know that I was going to be in trouble. But I was so desperate for a mask that I didn't care what I had to go through to get it. See, desperation is a tricky thing because it makes you accept almost anything. And so out of my desperation, I fell in love, but was really fell in brokenness with someone who was just as broken as I was. You see, there's something about when you start to build your home in your state of brokenness. Before you heal and before you can really grow, you decide to try and fix things. And so you build this home in a place of brokenness, in a state of brokenness. And it should come as no surprise when you live in this broken state that everyone around you is broken too. I felt like I did everything they told me to do in church. You have a baby out of wedlock, get married, it's better to marry than to burn. And so you get married to whoever is willing to marry you and all of your mess. And you get married, and it's not necessarily who God told you to marry, but it's someone who's a cover-up, and so you're fine with that, and you sit in church, and then you have the audacity to be upset with God because you have created something that you now want Him to bless. But I didn't have time to hear that, so I was mad at God and I was blogging about it. And I was like, Jesus, why did you do this to me? I did what they told me to do in church. I'm married now. I had this baby at a young age. I tried to clean up my life. I tried to go to school. I dropped out of school. I wasn't focused, but still, God, please help me. I was waitressing at a strip club, but God, please, come on, Jesus. I did what I had to do to fix all of that, and I need you to help me now because I have what they told me was supposed to make me happy, but I'm still hurting on the inside. Couldn't help but be faced with the reality that this dream I had manufactured wasn't God's will for my life. For instance, when I was living in Virginia, my husband and I were putting the children to sleep, and he was upstairs putting our daughter to bed, and I was maybe washing the dishes, and I looked out the window and I saw this car running. And I noticed it was his taillights, because if anyone has been in a relationship where there's been repeated infidelities, you recognize that women are CIA agents on the inside. Your intuition. And so I, went into full spy mode, and I was like, I'm going to sneak outside of the house and make my way to the car without my husband hearing me. And so I did it. I snuck outside the house real quiet. You open the door real quiet, close it real quiet. And I walk up to the car, and there's a woman in the car, which I knew there was going to be a woman in the car. And I said, what are you doing with my husband? And she said, we kicking it. And that's when things got a little fuzzy for me. I couldn't really process it fully. It's like, and so before I knew it, I'll just say I didn't know the police can make it that fast to our neighborhood. But Lansdowne police, honestly, they're awesome. Someone should give them a star, because by the time I got finished, I had a police report in Virginia, because I had to show out just a little bit, because they kept reminding me over and over and over again that this dream that I was trying to hold together for the sake of looking like I had made it to the other side of my struggle was falling apart over and over again. I'm ramming cars like forward, reverse, forward, reverse, forward, reverse over and over again. 3 months later, the girl is pregnant. And due on my birthday. But see, here's the thing. Had I been coming to church and surrounded by love, instead of trying to hide and avoid anyone who would really see inside of me, I wouldn't have felt the need to lose it, because I would have known that I wasn't in it by myself. You see, you make a very grave mistake when you make pretending your reality, because you start to believe your own lie. And so I've now tricked myself into believing that I'm in it on my own. I can't count on people. I'm certainly not counting on God. And so I have to take measures into my own hands and ram cars and not fight people. What is something you can say in church? Pray fervently with power and laying of hands on people. Whew. Well, I think that we all have our own journeys. I know that it was something that we spoke about a lot in our ministry, but just because my parents are preaching about it doesn't mean that I will live by it. That's the reality of it, that we all find out on our own. And so I knew that it was against what our ministry stood for. And I think that we make sex and we make marriage and relationships so mysterious. And I think that that strikes a curiosity in children. And I think that it's important that we're honest with them about sex, about relationships, about marriage, so that it doesn't become something that they're so interested in because no one's talking about it. Well, you can come home, we can talk about it here, it'll feel good and all those other things, but it's not that time. And I think that there is a level of transparency that as a parent I can have with him that says this is the consequence of doing things this way. And that is where we find ourselves in the world, running from God. And in church, from the outside looking in, it looks like we are enjoying it, like we went for a swim. But in reality, we've just been thrown overboard, lost, pleading and begging with God to send something to save us. Anything, a shark, a whale, a boat, a lifeboat, a drug, a relationship, a testimony. I knew that they had high expectations for me as their daughter, and I felt like I did let them down. But the grace of it all is that we have a faith that teaches us no matter what you've done, there's always a way back onto the right path. And I think that those years are the years where you mess up and learn the rights and wrongs of life and how that molds you into who you're going to be as an adult. And I had that moment, and at that time I had to decide what my future was going to be. Was I going to allow this moment to define me? I graduated high school at 16. I enrolled at Texas Christian University because I knew that I had me and my son to care for, and I didn't want the rest of my story to be, hey, you got pregnant and then everything went downhill from there. No, I'm going to be something. I'm going to do something, and I'm going to put all that I have at it for me and for my baby. I talked to my dad about it, and I told him, I said, Dad, I know that this is going to be, at that time he'd been on Time magazine, so I knew, this isn't going to be the best light that you're going to be seen in, and I know you're going to have a lot of attacks. And I said, Dad, if you want me to, I'll send them back a service. I don't have to come to church, whatever's going to make this easier. I think the beauty of the way I was raised is that there was always a level of honesty there. So I'll tell him, this is my story, this is what I did. You were a blessing in many ways, but it made my life more difficult than it had to be. And so if you stay focused on this, you can have everything at its right time. And so I think that I'll just tell him to stay focused on what's important now. And then if there's plenty of time to have kids and be married and fight and argue with your girlfriends. I always say it's got to be God the more that I grow. And I think that something happened when I was at Woman Thou Art Loosed and exposed the fact that I had my son at such an early age. And it really was just a moment that I thought would happen between my father and I. I never thought that it would go viral or that I would end up speaking anywhere. And I think that the more I exposed my scars, the more I exposed my shame, the more I was willing to say, I really don't have it all together, but I really am trying, and my heart is in the right place, that people were like dying. And I thought, I spent all of this time running from church, running from God, because I didn't think that I had a life that would be acceptable and approved by people. And they're running from themselves too. The pastors are just as afraid of the children, of being exposed, of preaching a message one Sunday and then dealing with their own humanity on Monday. But they don't tell us that. And they leave us often as their members, and more importantly as their children, left to deal with those issues on our own. And we seek comfort in any way we can. As a mother, I can tell you that there are some things I won't do because of my children. They wanted me to do a reality TV show, and I'm like, y'all gonna be so bored, because I'm not gonna cuss nobody out in public on TV. I'm not gonna throw any bottles because I have children, and one day they're gonna have to see this. My children didn't tell me, Sarah, don't be on reality TV or you're gonna mess it up, because I love them. I made a decision to honor that love with my actions. It's been a really long time running from my last name because I didn't feel like I deserved it, because there's so much honor that comes with it, and I have a lot of shame that I'm dealing with. But actually, I'm okay with that, because my last name is who I am. If you are living in a state of brokenness, you can only encounter other broken people. And so I found another broken person who I could pour all of this hope into, because if I was honest, I had kind of given up on myself. But I thought, if I take your brokenness and you take my brokenness, maybe we could build something. Because I don't know about you, but there are times when you make mistakes, when your life has detours, when you find yourself dealing with the wounds of life. And you come into church where you're hoping that someone could, just give you a little bit of encouragement, and instead they judge you. sometimes they treat you like you got like Ebola a little bit, and they want you to go sit in the back and, you know, don't rub off on anybody because sin is contagious, and if you hanging around her, you're going to do the same thing you did. And so we isolate hurting people, but then tell them that God's love is accessible to them. And I feel like we fail as messengers of God. We do a great job of convicting people. We do an incredible job of shaming people, but it's not many of us that are willing to have a love fest in the middle of someone's mess. And so I did what most of us do when we find ourselves challenged with the wounds of life. I pretended that I was okay, that I had healed and that I would be fine. And, you know, I had my son with me and I was trying to protect him from as much of the judgment as I could. And, you know, I'm going to present this picture perfect life to God. I'm going to get my life together, and then I'm going to present it to God, and I'm going to tell him, see, I knew I messed up, but look what I did. I fixed it. And so I started working very diligently to fix my mistakes, and I thought that that would come by getting an education and falling in love and having this white picket fence. But I didn't think I'd ever have to deal with the infection that the judgment caused, or the infection that the shame caused, or the reasons why I even was that insecure that I ended up pregnant. I didn't want to deal with any of that. I just wanted to get my mask together so that I could come into church and look like everyone else, even though I was hurting on the inside. God, I just acknowledge that this moment is about you getting a word to your people. And I ask that you would stop at nothing to make that word become flesh. God, I submit myself over to you. I surrender to everything that you have pre-designed this moment to be. God, bring my words, my thoughts, my heart into alignment with what you know this moment has the power to become. And God, I am believing that as you do so, that generational curses can be broken. God, I'm believing that as you do so, that miracles can take place. God, I'm believing that as you do this, that even demons can be cast out, because that's the kind of God that I serve. And the same power that raised Jesus out of the grave is alive in this room, and you're just searching for someone to pour it into. And God, I say, choose me. And if you do it, I promise that I will turn every single moment, every thought over to you. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.